This hormone makes you smarter, stronger, and more masculine, but it also makes your hairline recede. So in today's video, I'm going to be covering DHT and balding and explain to you exactly how it works, the benefits of it, and how to get the benefits without actually going bald. So it's really important you don't just write off DHT as a bad thing, something that only causes balding, and you could just take DHT blockers and you're going to be completely fine, because in fact it is not always bad. It has quite a few positives. And another thing you don't want to do is think that balding is only going to happen when you're old. It's if you have high levels of DHT, and specifically the genetics for it to bind to the receptors on your head, then you could go bald very young if you're not paying attention to this. And for that reason, this video is going to be covering what role DHT plays in your body, the root cause of balding, and ultimately how you could prevent balding without crashing your hormones. Now first, I want to go into the DHT positives. It's important to understand that DHT is the primary form of testosterone that is going to be masculinizing your brain. Somebody with more DHT is going to have a more masculine brain. The other way testosterone masculinizes your brain is through aromatizing into estrogen, but that is separate. DHT alone is going to have a very positive effect on your brain. And because of this, you're going to have the effects that most people say they have when they hop on steroids. You're going to feel a lot more confident with more DHT. You're going to have a lot more drive, and you're also going to be a lot more aggressive, which is a good thing if you understand how to control it. You want to have the ability to be aggressive, but the control over your aggression. The other thing involving the brain that DHT really impacts is your sexual function. Now, DHT binds to areas of the brain that are very responsible for your sexual function, so it is very helpful for having high levels of libido and high levels of erectile function. The next thing it does is it essentially amplifies puberty. And just because you're not in puberty doesn't mean it won't have these effects. Now, these effects happen much more from DHT during puberty, but after puberty, up until around 25, 26, and then it slightly impacts it past that. And because of that, it's going to impact your puberty development. It's going to give you more facial hair or body hair. Once again, a thing that's responsible based off your receptors, not only DHT, but if you don't have the receptors, then you won't be getting that hair. And then the two other things are deep voice and genital development. There are only two ways to actually get a deep voice. One, it's with vocal training. I have never vocal trained though. Mine is solely from DHT. DHT does impact your voice significantly, so that is another consideration if you want to have a deeper voice. Now, the other thing that DHT impacts is muscle development. But DHT isn't more beneficial towards protein synthesis than other forms of testosterone, but it is something that impacts your protein synthesis. So if you are limiting it, naturally you are going to be limiting the amount of protein synthesis in your body, and you're going to be limiting the amount of gains you could get inside of the gym. Now, the next thing it impacts is your prostate health. And most people think that DHT only negatively impacts your prostate health, but it could have a positive impact if you have poor levels of DHT. So it could have a negative impact and it could have a positive impact. So that one's kind of in between a downside and a positive. Really depends on you and your current levels. Now, the downside we are going to be talking about in this video is balding. Simply how that works is it binds to your DHT receptors and your hair follicles. It shrinks those hair follicles and it makes them fall out earlier, so they no longer stay in your hair as long. Therefore, they're causing balding because they are smaller and they are functioning to less of an extent. Now, I have to note that this is something that is largely genetic, so if you're genetically prone to it, then it's going to be very hard to completely prevent this without just wrecking your levels and causing more negative effects. But you could prolong this significantly with the implementations I am about to talk about. It really just depends on the sensitivity of your receptors inside of your scalp. Just like some individuals respond more to steroids because they have more androgen receptors, same idea with your DHT receptors for balding. You might just be hypersensitive to this. And last thing I'm going to say before I get into the advice on how to prevent balding is please talk to your doctor before implementing this stuff. I'm not recommending any of it. I am just informing you on it. So we know DHT has positives. Now let's get into how to manage the local DHT inside of your scalp without actually crashing your natural DHT levels. Now the first two things I'm mentioning are shampoos. Why? Because these shampoos could be directly applied to your scalp, therefore they are only going to locally affect that area. Now, the first one is ketoconazole shampoo, and ketoconazole shampoo has anti-inflammatory properties, and inflammation is also bad for balding, but it also has very similar effects to minoxidil in studies because it does impact DHT and the amount of DHT being binded in those areas. It also significantly increases your hair density and the amount of hair follicles, so it is something that is going to be pretty effective. Now, this is going to be the more abrasive shampoo of the two I'm listing because it is something that you probably want to avoid getting on the rest of your body, because it is something that is quite potent. So if you do decide to do this, really just focus on only washing your head at that time. I don't remember the exact details, but you have to keep that shampoo on your head for a certain amount of time. I really recommend not washing your body and stuff while it's on your head, because you really just don't want to get it on the rest of your body, because, well, you don't want something that's blocking your DHT just dripping down your body. And then in the studies, they normally used it for 2 to 3 times a week. The next thing you could do is utilize caffeine shampoo, which is shampoo that actually has caffeine in it. And the idea of this is that the caffeine goes into your hair follicles, and then once it's in your hair follicles, it blocks the DHT from playing its role. It's like all other receptors, where if something else is binded to it, then the primary hormone can't play its role. Just like phthalates block your androgen receptors, caffeine is basically playing the same role on your DHT receptors when you are applying it on your scalp. So that's the idea of it. It's not extremely potent, but it is very noticeable. So the difference is the ketoconazole shampoo is going to actually add hair follicles, and this isn't going to add any. It's simply just going to prevent any more harm from happening. So that's why it's less potent than the alternative. And then this is, in fact, something that you should be using daily if you do it to get the maximum benefits. Now, the next thing is minoxidil. And something that's really potent about minoxidil is it extends the growth phase of your hair follicles, and it's going to be impacting it in plenty of ways. It's likely going to be the most potent thing you can do, and it's also very studied, so we do know the effects of it. Now, how it does this is by dilating your vessels, and it's going to deliver more blood flow, therefore more nutrients, allowing for a more rapid growth. It also opens up ATP channels, so it's going to be delivering ATP, which is once again another resource for hair growth. And then the last thing minoxidil does is it's a very potent DHT blocker, like I was mentioning earlier. So DHT, once again, isn't going to be harming the future of these hairs. The next thing is topical saw palmetto, which is just going to be a cream. And this cream blocks 5-alpha reductase locally, which simply means that it's going to block the conversion of testosterone to DHT in this area. That's the main thing that inside your body that does cause this conversion. So when you block it, it's no longer going to happen, and you're not going to have DHT inside of your scalp. there was actually a good study that looked at this, and it was 16 weeks long, had placebos in it, and what it found in groups of people with androgenous alopecia, which simply means it's because of DHT that this is happening, that they are losing their hair. What ended up happening was using saw palmetto ended up preventing the hair loss and stimulate the repair of that hair and the repair of that area that they were losing hair, and it allowed them to grow longer, or those hair follicles to grow longer. How often you should apply it would be 1 to 2 times a day, and that'll likely have a very significant impact. And then to bring all of these together, I have to mention microneedling. Now, microneedling is only really effective if you combine it with other things, because it allows those things to actually absorb easier. So if you are microneedling, likely with a derma roller, the idea is that you're also improving blood flow. So you improve blood flow and you also improve the absorption of these things. So they do play more of a role, and you could effectively prevent the active role of DHT destroying your scalp. Now, I am sick, so I'm gonna wrap up this video. Thank you for watching, boys. Join my email list in the comments, and as always, perspicacity is our grindstone for success. Keep on grinding, boys.